Okay, it is June 22nd, 2023 at 4:33 p.m. I will now call the Infrastructure and Community Investment Committee meeting to order. This meeting is being held in person and electronically in accordance with the Municipal Act. There are no public meetings and no open delegations, so I'll move us right into 3.0 presentations. There is one presentation this afternoon. Before we start, I would like to change the order of business to have agenda item 7.1 concerning the memorandum from S Culture, Acting Associate Director of Waste Management and Environmental Sustainability regarding the Blue Box transition and new waste collection contract details to be considered at the same time as the presentation. Are members of committee in agreement? Excellent. All right, I will move to the first presentation. I'll now call upon Sandy Coulter, and thank you very much for your patience, the Acting Associate Director of Waste Management and Environmental Sustainability, and Chris Marchant, the Manager of Solid Waste, to approach the podium for the presentation concerning the Blue Box transition and solid waste collection contract.
Thank you so much. It is great to be here. It's been a little bit of time since anyone from the waste management area of the corporation has come to share some information with you. So we are really, truly happy to be here and share information with you. So we do have a little bit of information to share with you. I understand you typically are looking for about a 10-minute presentation. We're going to try to get there. We might be a little bit over, but please bear with us because we do want to get through some important information for you. The agenda for tonight's presentation is pretty straightforward. We want to review with you the regulatory framework that's driving the Blue Box transition and the circular economy framework. We'll talk to you a little bit about the Blue Box transition details. We'll share with you information on the new waste collection contract, and there's quite a bit of information in there on that. And then we'll talk a little bit about resourcing because we are working on the budget right now. And then we'll talk about next steps. So the story begins back in June 9th, 2016, with the province enacting the Resource Recovery and Circular Economy Act. And that's the framework around which everything we're talking to you tonight about is centered. From that act comes the Circular Economy Initiative. And so that initiative is really driving a change to our systems. We have over the past few years shared some information with council. On May 25th, we presented information on the Provincial Circular Economy Initiative, and it's tied to a framework that will leak over into Barry's initiative. But from the province perspective, the circular economy is now based on 4 pillars, and it's a renewal of the old recycling Blue Box, all right, the 3 R's program. And so, and 3 R's is reduce, reuse, and recycle. So the circular economy framework then uses a few elements within the old 3 R's, but adds consume and recover. And those are important because the consume pillar is really aimed at reducing organic waste going to disposal streams, such as landfills and sewers. And the recover piece is more about employing technologies that will recover and reuse the nutrients and energy repeatedly. And so that's important because incineration, as an example, provides an opportunity to extract energy when it burns, but once it's burnt or incinerated, it's ash, and it has no further value. So the province is really trying to steer us away from technologies that give you a single bang for the buck, if you will, and looking for strategies to reuse and recycle nutrients and energy. So that's the recover piece. And it's interesting to note that this is information from the province, but 32% of the current Ontario waste stream is organic waste. And the province defines organic waste as food scraps and yard waste. So that's an important pillar. Those two pillars are actually. So on March 22nd, 2001, we were again in front of council and with motion 21 G054, the Barrie adopted its own circular economy framework. And that's a really important piece of information because it was that staff report and council approval that has led to the design of our current waste management system. Oh, sorry, our future waste management system. So the new waste collection contract that Chris will share some information with you in a minute. But the Barrie's circular economy framework is designed to support positive environmental outcomes, reduce reliance on raw materials, stimulate innovation, and support economic growth and competitiveness. It's an important initiative to ultimately get to some sort of zero waste strategy. Blue box transition. So out of the Resource Recovery Act, the blue box transition regulation came into force on June 3rd, 2021. And so that piece of legislation transfers the financial and organizational responsibility of the blue box from municipalities to producers. And so currently today, municipalities are paying approximately 50% of the blue box costs. That in our world, that's well known, but actually when I out and talk to people, a lot of people don't know that part of their tax dollars actually pay for the blue box system. So 50% of the blue box system approximately is paid for by the municipality. So it's taken a long, long time for municipalities to convince the province that, we don't want to be on the hook for that anymore. It should be the producers. And who are the producers? They're the first importers or the manufacturers of materials that end up in the blue box. And that's an important piece because if the producers or first importers don't pay into the blue box, then their materials aren't eligible to be in the blue box. And that's why we have rules on what's allowed in the blue box and what's not. And those rules are somewhat loose because what also drives the blue box is commodity markets. And so if a collector in a recycling organization can find a market and actually make it a commodity and get paid for it, then they consider collecting it. And so what's happened over time is each municipality then has its own set of rules about their blue box collection. And I don't know, I've been lucky enough to be in Barrie for all my life, which is I'm truly blessed because it's a great place to live. But I've talked to a lot of people who have moved around and there's different blue box rules in different municipalities, and it's not consistent and it's not standardized. So blue box transition is working towards exactly that, standardizing a common collection system where the rules are consistent across all municipalities in Ontario. So back to the slide for SAC, the regulation came into effect on June 3rd, 2021. It actually begins. It's in effect for the very first time in a few municipalities on July 1st, 2023. It's being phased in across the province, starting on July 1st, 2023, and the phased in approach ends the end of December 2025. So Barrie, as you can see on the slide there, on the bottom part, is scheduled to transition on May 1st, 2024. So on that date, the municipality then is no longer responsible to collect the blue box materials from the curb. And it will be the producer. So it would likely could be another collector. And it could, the collection days could change, hopefully they don't. And this is all in the works right now. So we're just receiving information right now from the regulators about what things might look like for Barrie. The municipalities who are transitioning on July 1st are still receiving information. There's a lot of work to be done in a very short period of time. We recommended and we're lucky enough to transition in 2024. So we're not on the leading edge, which in this with this kind of a system with the amount of unknowns, we didn't want to be the first. And we thought that might be just the right idea. So May 1st, 2024, we're in the middle. And that's not a bad place to be. So end of 2025 is when the transition period ends. And then in January 2026, the producers take on full responsibility across the entire province. And then it becomes their system and they may make changes. The regulation allows that to happen. So over the transition period, things should stay reasonably static. What goes in the blue box now, is still allowed in there, but that could change January 1st, 2026. And so there's still some unknowns out there. We have not got that information yet. This slide is a little daunting, and we apologize for that, but we're trying to put as much information on a slide as we could. So this is blue box transition, eligible, non-eligible. So what does that mean? Eligible sources in terms of blue box transition are the sources that the pros, the producers, will collect from. So that's where those are the sources that the municipality will push off to an alternative collector or producer. So the eligible sources or the sources that the municipality is pushing off: single family residential homes, seasonal dwellings, multi-res, schools, public and private, specific retirement homes, and specific public space bins or containers. The word specific is there because it's still not fully defined yet. And so we're still living in some of the gray right now, but what we believe to be true is that an element of those two areas will be in. So when you kind of bundle all that up, it's really the residential stream, single family, multi-res, condos, with a slight public element from schools, retirement homes. I expect that list will likely change as time goes on too. But for now, that's the information we have at hand. So that's the eligible sources. That's the blue box material that we're going to push off. They're not taking it all, though. And so they've determined a list of ineligible sources. So ineligible sources are those sources that the pros will not collect from and are not in their program. So who looks after them? We are. And so those sources are Because we're doing that today. The ineligible sources are still part of our collection system. And so as on May 1st, 2024, when we transition, we will continue to collect from industrial, specified for-profit organizations, a place of worship, municipal buildings, daycares. It's the ICI community, basically, in a nutshell. So we're doing that now. We'll continue to do that. And the interesting thing, we had a conversation with the rule makers on this one. And you know, I asked them to help me understand how in a system that we're designing to try to create greater capture and recover more materials and you know, do all of the things that the circular economy is trying to achieve, how come we're not looking after the non-eligible sources? And we are right now. The answer I got is we didn't make the rules. So I said, I'm going to just convey that message to, you know, those who are running our municipality, because you know, I thought it was important for you to hear that, because that was the answer we got. And so you know, we can't run a system and not collect from sources that we're currently collecting from. So that was we thought that was important to convey to you. So specifically within Blue Box transition, there was an area, and this is going to continue to change too, I suspect. But when we were making decisions on designing the waste collection contract, we needed to understand, you know, from the Blue Box piece, what was in and what was out. And so when we were making decisions on the contract, parks interiors were in from a public space bin perspective. So, you know, and so the waterfront, you know, all along the waterfront, there's a lot of people there. Our you know, waste management systems are taxed there, and they're important to run. And so the early information is that they were in. And after we had awarded the contract, they changed the rules. And so parks interiors are out. And so, you know, we are now adjusting our system to accommodate for that. But I just wanted to throw that in as an example for you that it's still a flux out there. And, you know, the information that we're providing you tonight is truly a snapshot. And because it will change again. And, you know, we'll certainly be back to you for updates and any important changes, which takes us to the new waste collection contract. And Mr. Marchant will take it from here.
Thanks, Andy. Just before I jump in and get started with respect to the collections contract, and a point of clarity, not that there was any oversight or anything, but Blue Box includes gray box material as well. So within Barrie, we're dual stream, meaning recycling, so that when Sandy's saying Blue Box, it covers all the material streams that we've got. So as Sandy said, transition to the new collections contract aligns with our transition to producer responsibility within the recycling program with the Blue Box program. And our contract with Waste Connections, current contract provider, that expires April 30th, 2024. So as of May 1st, we join a new contract or start a new contract with the Mterra Group that was developed over a lengthy amount of time with a lot of collaboration. So there was a massive procurement document, an RFP that was developed, and the contract ultimately that came out of that through extensive collaboration, both with finance, legal services, and many folks within the IGM division as well. So as the slide says, we've got a transition date that corresponds with our Blue Box date, as Sandy noted. And we're going to see some increasing costs as a result of technological advances that lead to automated cart collection. We've seen this in lots of municipalities within Ontario and across North America for that matter. Whoops, thank you. And so, yeah, sorry, in our contract, as you're about to learn here, is going to continue to use the manual format that we've got right now from May 1st, 2024 until September 8th or September 8th, I guess is the date that we transition to an automated cart collection program. So we'll have the same sort of program that we're seeing in Simcoe County and many other municipalities within Ontario and North America, as mentioned. In addition to the costs associated with technology and stuff, we're seeing, and some of you experienced it last fall with labor challenges just in getting manual collection staff to do that work, get out there. It is rather strenuous and backbreaking to a degree and leads to real difficulties in recruitment. And that's what drove the industry, I think, in general, to the automated collection system that we're about to undertake. So what we've got here is a slide of the cart sizes that we're looking to go ahead with for the city. These were chosen to align with existing garbage collection limits. So with the exception of ICI, and I'll touch on that, but in the residential sector, as you well know, every other week we've got 2-bag limit, and the cart size that's chosen effectively equates to that. On the ICI side of things, the addition of organics means that we're hoping we can direct more away from the actual waste stream and divert it to the organic stream and see that used as part of that whole circular economy initiative that Sandy's mentioned. In addition, we've kind of landed on cart sizes, and you may also recall from our friends in the county some lessons learned there about some challenges that they had with the initial rollout, and ultimately discovered that through conversations with the county and as well as Emterra, that within about a 3-month span of deploying these kind of carts, there's often folks that went from wanting a much smaller cart to saying, wait a second, I could really use the extra space, and I want to go back. So to avoid some flip-flopping, this is what we're proposing to go ahead with. So some of the key changes that we're going to see under the first portion of the contract, that manual portion that I've referred to, is pet waste being a big one. We hear from residents quite often that those that have pets, it ends up in their garbage and just adds to that bag limit. So now, in a certified compostable bag, you can put your pet waste into that organic stream and it'll be processed at an organics facility. As I mentioned, we've extended green bin or organics collection to the ICI sector and all city facilities as well. In addition to that, there's an additional improvement, I guess, to the BIA, and it's certainly not an I guess, it is an improvement to the BIA collection in that the frequency, both for residential properties there and the businesses within the BIA, is expanded to daily. So Monday to Friday, and that's for garbage, organics, recycling, those non-eligible sources only, and public space bins, so the garbage only there, because the pros are responsible for public space bins in the downtown core as well. In addition, there's every other week yard waste collection, and that's the opposite week from the garbage collection weeks. And that's April through November and inclusive. And the yard waste collection is to occur any day of the week in that week. So we don't have the situation, or we're trying to avoid the situation that we found ourselves in last fall, in that the residents had a designated day that they had to get their yard waste out. You get it out on your day. However, that collector or collector will have the week to deal with collecting the material and getting it off the curb. In addition, there's going to be no schedule shifting outside of Christmas and New Year's Day. So that can create confusion for residents when we have to shift a day as a result of Victoria Day holiday or whatever the case may be. And so it's nice not to have that. The collector will continue to collect materials on Victoria Monday, if you will, Victoria Day Monday. And then moving into the next phase, so our automated phase coming in September 2025. We're going to transition to cart collection for garbage, organics, and recycling in non-eligible sources. Right, so it's the recycling portion, I mean, in non-eligible sources. BIA collection frequency for garbage, organics, recycling, and non-eligible sources only, again, changes from daily to twice weekly, both residential and businesses as well. The thinking there being with the use of the carts, the idea is to keep the downtown clean and avoid seagulls and other vermin stuff getting into bags and ripping them open. Once we transition to carts, obviously there's containment there. And so they can be rolled out, the hope being that we can maintain that level of service, keep the downtown clean, but reduce the frequency of the collection. Additionally, BIA space or public space bins, garbage only, that remains daily to avoid those things becoming a problem and overflowing in the BIA. We stick with the every other week yard waste collection. again, opposite from the garbage collection week, April through November inclusive. And still no collection shifting with respect to holidays. And then there is a switch to single stream recycling. So I, mentioned at the start that we've got blue box and gray box currently. Single stream just means everything is going into a single container, and that is for non-eligible sources as well. So the ones that Sandy had already identified. So resourcing. This all comes with a cost, of course, and some people needed to get us to where we need to get. As mentioned, there's extensive ongoing collaboration that's happening at this point with finance and Access Berry communication staff in particular. That's necessary to get the public on board with what we're doing here and get residents understanding the changes, where responsibilities lie between ourselves and the pros. All the information about the carts, setouts, that sort of thing. This is a lot of information for a lot of people to digest and try to understand in a fairly short amount of time. So we're all working very hard to try and get those packages and that information together to make this as seamless as possible. Some of the factors that are influencing the costs here is just that the expansion of organics, both into the ICI sector and then the inclusion of pet waste. Processing that stuff comes with a bit of an additional cost, but obviously is an offset to what's going into the garbage stream. The enhanced collection within the BIA we touched on, being every day for the first part of the contract and then twice a week daily after. We have expanded curbside collection to multi-residential private roads and laneways. So there's numerous developments, in particular within some of the newer parts of the city that are condo corporations where currently curbside collection, because of the language within the existing contract, isn't an option. With this contract, they can be brought onto the program, receive collection right at their driveway or door, if you will. As mentioned, there is additional equipment that's required. So the contractor that's coming on board has a significant capital cost up front to purchase trucks that can complete manual collection, the first part of this contract, give us the time necessary to get the programs in place, information packages, and the things that we mentioned from a communications perspective, promotion and education to residents, and then have those trucks be capable to have that auto cart technology easily installed. And then just the transition and the eligible blue box collection and the processing to the producer. So again, explaining that relationship, who does what to our residents and the general public it's going to come with a cost. Obviously, we've got to advertise and market this accordingly. And then, annual just cost escalation triggers like CPI, fuel adjustments, and adjusted number of stops. So the new collections contract, unlike the old, is based on service units, the amount of stops that they have to make to collect. And the other thing that's worth noting too, the last time we did this, as far as renew a collections contract and change the way that we're collecting waste within the city, was 10 years ago. And so a lot has happened financially and obviously technology that has led to some fairly significant increases. So that's a big part of the reason why we're where we are from a financial perspective. And that's the slide everybody's been anxiously awaiting, I'm sure. And so as you can see, things go up. And there's no sugarcoating it. It is what it is. The numbers are there. Worth noting though, within 2024, so that is our transition year, right? So we've got a portion of that year that is under the manual portion of the contract. And then I would say the true cost going forward is 2025 and beyond, where we see full automated collection, producer responsibility. And this is our system. And this is what we'll be living with for the next, 8 years with a 2-year extension, 2 single 1-year extensions available. So this could take us potentially for another 10 years. As I mentioned, resourcing. So this comes obviously at a resourcing cost both financially, but we need some people as well to make this happen and be successful with it. Significant changes, as I can continue to say or repeat, and sorry for being repetitive, but it is significant and it's something that we really need to draw attention of our residents to. To do this, it's about a 4-year project for extensive transition planning, the implementation and system monitoring in a couple of key areas. So we're looking for a temporary waste management resource within environmental sustainability, just to focus on specialized logistical components like the transition to automated carts, troubleshooting the collection issues that we know we're going to get, and troubleshooting those effectively. And then, you know, everything that's associated with the contract and the transition to producer responsibility on the Blue Box side. Additionally, some communications resources are going to be required within Accessberry to assist us in getting this message out and ensuring that we have a well-informed public and our residents are comfortable with the programs that we're going to have in place going forward. Finally, some next steps. So there's work being undertaken right now. Obviously, we're not sitting on our hands here waiting for 2024 to roll around. The waste collection bylaw is being updated to align with new system changes reflective of both the carts eventually and just obviously the language around changes in dates and collection periods and things like that, as well as recycling. We're going to maintain connections, with the regulatory authorities, just to stay current on what's happening. As Sandy mentioned, it's very fluid. There's changes coming at a pace that it's somewhat head scratching, to be honest, just given the state of where some municipalities are, how late or how little time they're given to deal with what comes down the pipe, if you will. So we have very active relationships with those folks and are keeping our finger on the pulse there. We're actively working right now with our new collection services provider, Mterra, just to review, finalize their work plans, ensure that we've got our I's dotted and T's crossed so that our rollout as of 2024 goes as smoothly as possible. Again, working with stakeholders, both within the municipality and residents, businesses, all parties, to ensure that we get a smooth transition to the automated cart collection service. And then you can expect to see some intake forms in the 2024 budget to support the resource requirements that I just noted, and ensure, successful transition to this contract, which includes obviously developing those communication strategies and plans and rolling out some campaigns to make people aware of what's happening. So that is about the end of what we got in the way of prepared material. And I know we have collectively dropped a lot on you. So you digest for a second. And if you have any questions, we're happy to answer what we can.
Thank you both for the presentation. It was quite informative, and I know having a effective and reliable waste management system can be a hot topic for residents. So very helpful for us to receive this information tonight. And when you started the presentation and said municipalities pay for 50% of the Blue Box, and that's going to be transferred to the producers, I thought, great, we're going to save money. And then you see the cost implications, and wow, it's significant. So I'm going to open it up to questions first from committee members. Councillor Thompson. Oh, sorry, Deputy Mayor Thompson.
Thank you, Chair Hamilton. Thanks for the presentation. So I have a few questions. The costs associated in the increases on slide 15, this is to the collector. So the 2.4, is there other costs associated, like you were talking about producing it? So our waste collector picks it up at curbside and takes it to the landfill. Is there a are they doing sorting or anything other than being a trucking company?
With respect to waste, no. Oh, sorry. Yes, with respect to waste, no, it essentially comes to the landfill. The trucks would enter the active cell, dispose of the waste or deposit the waste. Our staff up there, obviously, there's a fill plan. We deal with compacting the waste and doing as much as we can to preserve the life of the landfill, but waste gone. With respect to organics the ineligible recycling sources, yes, those materials go to different facilities for processing and sorting, if you will. And help me out here if you'd like to speak any further on either of those things, but essentially recyclable materials go to what's called a MRF, a material resource facility, sorting facility. They determine what can be kept, be used as marketed or marketed to as a commodity, what ends up as waste, and then that's dealt with, and that's part of the contracted cost that's associated with that. On the organic side of things, there is another party that has a processing facility, and the material is taken there. It goes through their biological process, if you will, and ends up becoming fertilizer or soil.
And what is different from today? Everything goes to our landfill with our provider of Waste Connections?
No, it's really similar. Actually, they Waste Connections also have.
They use
it. Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
So with the increase we're actually getting 50% less of the service. We're going to have a different truck picking up the eligibles, a truck picking up the non-eligibles. Like garbage collection is going to be confusing, and thank God, gosh, for Miss Reed, because that is be a communication nightmare, you know. By the transition from manual to automated in the contract, would the procurement part of it not have been probably more prudent to extend current until the city was ready and then go to automated, as you've asked somebody? Because I would imagine in the procurement, the age of the truck at the end of the contract is part of a procurement because of reliability. You can't have old vehicles because that's not good for our residents. So we're asking a company to go out and purchase trucks that are available for manual, then to convert into, which is a dual purpose truck, different hydraulics, different everything, which is probably we're eating the cost of their capital through the tax dollar, because if we maintain the same truck, then to transition, it would have been a lot probably cheaper, because we're asking somebody to buy a specialty truck opposed to a side lift, a claw, front load or something, right? So I'm a little bit, you know, because I look at the price and I look at the organic. If we're doing what we're doing now, they still pick it up every week. Like the cost is doubled. And I understand there's other things that are able to get into there, but you know, recycling is still, you know, going up. So like I said, I won't take all the time and stuff. With the increased service to the BIA, will some of the bill, and I know they pay a levy and that's part of it, will it actually go directly to the waste collection, or is it just the same as it goes to our coppers and we just, that's okay. So it's not an extra levy on them of the
No.
waste. Okay, that was, and I know that was a service level directed by council, so.
So we could just share a little information with you on the cost drivers and the truck and the transition from a manual to an automated midway. So what we learned through this process, and it's interesting. So we did use we followed the corporation's procurement requirements. It's a competitive bid. And the bids were very close. And so what we know for sure from other municipal experiences is that their waste collection costs, their waste management costs have gone up significantly from a contract previous to a new contract now. So the industry is driving that. And what we also found out, which is incredibly interesting, is that there's very little interest from the industry to service a manual collection contract. They're just not interested. And they're not interested because they cannot attract and retain staff. Nobody wants to do that anymore. Their WSIB costs and their internal costs are high. And they just, honest to goodness, they're just not interested in it. And so when we designed the procurement document, great question. We wanted to ensure that we had some flexibility, because we do need time to transition to carts 100%, but we couldn't do it. Ideally, honestly, they would have wanted it in May 1st, 2024, right on the onset of the new contract, and not do a manual collection at all. So we were able to get a reasonable blend. I believe that. But also though, back to your question on the trucks and the change in the trucks. So they're actually, they're manufacturing the vehicles to be turned over efficiently and effectively. So the equipment that they will use to begin the contract is the exact same trucks that they will use when we go to carts. So they're being constructed right now to go to carts. And so we, for sure, you're 100% right. There would be a little bit of a cost for sure in converting the truck. Yeah. But knowing that the contractor, knowing that they have to do that, they're building them that way. And you're absolutely right about the length of the contract. And so it's purposefully at 8 years, because that's about the life of a truck. And, you know, and at the end of the contract, we will likely have paid their capital costs. You're right, absolutely.
And thank you for that. And look, I understand, and you know, and I know this has been a tough issue. Like this is, I think this come out pre-budget or just after budget, and then it had went back and stuff. So I know there's been lots of work on it, and I can appreciate it. It's been dumped on the municipality. That's created a little bit of one question. I noticed the significant increase in the battery collection, and I know that the how many tons of batteries do we actually collect? Would anybody know that?
14
14
ish.
14 tons, 14,000, like, or 14 tons.
Within the battery collection.
And do we find that it's increasing like 2022, 2023, 2024?
Marginally?
Or you don't know
Yeah,
24? like, obviously.
participation rates, I mean, they go up based on population effectively. It stays about the same in my recent experience within solid waste operations. Yeah, fairly consistent with that participation rate.
And the 14 tons we're collecting, I know that we allow it dropped at our facilities too.
Correct. At the,
Right. Is that included in that?
sorry, you're looking to Don.
I just,
At, well, we had the.
to be honest, I look at Michael for everything. I'll let him do.
We had a-
He's the default, so I'll be totally honest with you.
At the landfill, there is a household hazardous waste depot and they're accepted there as well. That only operates on Saturday, of course. But yes, so to answer your question, they're accepted there. There are potential other options as well as far as community depots and things like that we're actively investigating at this point to see. This remains something that I think we continue to look at going forward as far as battery collection costs and the best way to go ahead doing it.
Right, yeah, because like, and correct me if I'm wrong, there was kind of an agreement with the current, it was almost a gesture, a nice.
It was a nice to have, and
Okay.
after things went a little sideways last fall, as we all know, with yard waste collection.
Yeah.
When we started those conversations, again, it came with a cost a little bit.
Yeah.
But the difference being obviously that they hadn't previously had it in the contract, and it was done as a nice to have.
And the batteries are collected all like on the same day as
On your collection day.
right, on a
Some of
regular
your
collection
recycling
day,
is on
like
top of it.
twice a year it was, I think, if
Once.
and they would go to another facility. And the waste is actually valuable of the materials in a battery. Who do we receive that? Do we
There-
sell the waste?
Yeah, there's a small return on the investment.
Okay, so in the price here is reflective of that, like, let's say it was 70,000 and you put in 67 because maybe the return is very little.
Exactly.
Okay. Lots to think about, but thank you. I appreciate it.
Get it all out there? Okay, I'll move us along. Councilor Rietma. Your question?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks for your presentation. And it's definitely a challenge, I'm sure, because there's a lot of moving parts to this one. And you would think that it would be a lot cheaper for us now because the producers are now responsible for all the blue box. But curiously enough, it isn't. And I think do you think that there is a probability that the producers will reduce their packaging over time because it's going to cost them less? Is that where we're headed with this?
You're spot on. And because so transitioning, right? So now it's all theirs. It's happening right now. The manufacturer and first importers of the packaging are re-engineering, looking at different materials, looking at lighter materials, looking at materials that are more easily recovered and transferred and reused. That's happening right now. And you're absolutely right.
And I think a lot of that has happened already in Europe, and we're just borrowing from that. Right. And I guess just on the costs, in a couple of years, we have to be prepared for basically that garbage removal is going to be increased by 1% of our total budget. So that's significant, and it'll be a significant hit. I guess one of the things that you could probably do to help reduce the phone calls that counselors are going to get is to increase the options for the size of the containers. I'm just wondering if you could look at that and if you've thought about that, because I know that the county had a real pushback about the size of their containers, and then they had to go back and get smaller ones. And I think the same thing is likely to happen in the urban areas as well, simply because people have smaller garages and, you know, don't have room. So are there options to get smaller buckets for us?
Great question. And so in the county's experience, they realized that they entered into the cart transition phase without enough time to execute. So that was so they were rushed. What we did learn from other municipalities who have gone through this, and actually our contractors, is that you know, if we can arrive at a recommended standard residential set out and stay with that for some time. And the reason for that is because most municipal experience have shown that once you get by the first month or so, they get used to it. And you know, you get later, you know, a few months further down, they're happy. And so there's no need to change. And so what we're hearing from, you know, our colleagues out there is, you know, come up with a recommended standard set out and just try to stick with that for a while if you can. Now, I absolutely, and we absolutely understand that there are portions of the city where, you know, the standard set out may be too big. And we absolutely understand that and are 100% willing to have discussions with, you know, and what comes to my mind, Councilor Rima, is, you know, condos or townhouse arrangements with private roadways or laneways, limited area that we're intended to go collect. And so is there enough space there for all the carts? Maybe not. And so we would have to, you know, we would work with those people or those communities to figure out a way to make it work for them. But, you know, our go forward position, if you will, for a standard residential set out is as Chris described. And that set out is designed to accommodate the existing capacity we have right now.
Okay, I guess I have too many cars in my garage. That's the problem. One of the situations we have is that we have condos, for example, that don't recycle just because the condo board says, you know, we're not interested or it's too expensive or whatever. Will this new system address that?
I can't guarantee it, but what we do recognize, and with us actually is Richard Stevens, who's a environmental sustainability specialist. And so Richard is one of our corporate gurus on exactly those kind of programs, multi-res programs, as an example, Councilor Rietma. And so we are looking at ways to increase capture for materials that aren't garbage. And so recycling is one of them. Organics is huge. And so we're actually redesigning those programs as we work through this, where it could manifest itself into a change in the bylaw. The province, as an example, it is hinting at a potential organics ban in garbage. So they're starting to hint about that right now. So, you know, with Richard's help, you know, we're working actually with Michelle's group to see what we can do within those buildings to make it easier. Successful waste management is all about convenience. And I truly believe that it's a fact. And so, you know, you're spot on. We have to make it easier in there.
Madam Chairman, if I could just, I just want to pick up on that one. Because you've just landed on one of my favorite hobby horses, and that is organics. I think that if you look at the experience in the city, we're probably recycling or picking up from 1/3 of the houses, simply because people, only about 1/3 of the houses do organic recycling. And I'm not sure that's going to change anytime soon. And my hobby horse is that what we should be doing is not doing organic recycling at all. We need to put in carburetors in every house. When you look at us spending half our budget on organics, it makes no sense whatsoever to pick it up. I mean, if you look at California or Florida, for example, you know, 29 million Americans can't all be wrong. And so it seems to me that that's really where I'd like you to go with the organic side of things, because I think that's the way to handle it much more efficiently than what we're doing now.
Sure. And I hear you. But it's important to note though, that the province, through the Circular Economy Initiative, as I think I alluded to it earlier in the presentation, will be driving organics away from disposal. So I expect they'll get more serious about it. But what that means, though, I believe what it means is so keeping it out of the landfill, but also keeping it out of wastewater. And the reason for that, as I understand it, is throughout the province of Ontario, if we were to put it down the drain and push it to the sewage treatment plant, absolutely, it would come out in the digesters and be stabilized. And if all went well, it would go on agricultural land as organic soil conditioner. What does happen in Ontario is that in many municipalities, the output from a sewage treatment plant, the stabilized biosolids, go to landfill or are dried and incinerated. And so because of that, the province is pushing away from the disposal part of it. And so I just wanted to note that for you.
I used to work for the Ministry of Environment. I know what you're talking about. They're still getting into the 20th century. Okay, I think I'll leave it there, Madam Chair. Thanks.
Thank you. Moving on to Mayor Nuttall.
Thank you. To pick up on Deputy Mayor Thompson's question, so the trucks are being, I guess, engineered so that they can both provide the manual and the automatic. Was there a cost differential between those trucks and any other truck? And it's just the transition costs, or was there a required upgrade to the trucks themselves to be able to allow for the transition costs?
So within the proposal that was brought forth by Enter, the successful proponent, they're using a truck body that's a fairly, I'm going to call it a universal truck body. So again, allows for that manual collection. And then they've got this thing, it's called the Labrie Helping Hand. So Labrie is this chassis maker of the truck. It's essentially, it's a plug and play. So what we're paying for, I believe, is the capital investment for that technology, the equipment, to Councillor Thompson's point, Deputy Mayor Thompson's point, the hydraulics and the systems that are required there. There's cameras that are looking at what's going into each bin, that sort of thing. So, or what's coming out of each bin, excuse me. So I believe that's what the upfront capital cost is. The actual vehicle cost between that style of truck and say a different type of automated truck, I think we're going to see the same, if not possibly more, for a specifically dedicated automated collection vehicle. Just because of the way that those arms are constructed, and sometimes they're built a little bit differently based on my limited understanding of the way that the trucks are constructed, that may come with a bit more cost over and above what we're already getting with this sort of universal truck body that can be converted.
So your belief is that essentially it's costing less than just a directly automated truck body?
Or maybe not less, but on par.
On par. Okay. With regards to the sizes, I think Councillor just started to talk about that. One of the things that I heard on where was I, on Cundall's Road, right near St. Vincent, there's some townhomes that are fronting onto Cundles. They are whatever the smallest width is that we allow in the city of Barrie. And the concern was the size of the automated, the size of the receptacles for the automated service. Will we be able to, they take their garbage down to the road. Will we be able to reach out to those, like identify those smaller lots up front and reach out to them up front rather than, getting the delivery of large units and then getting the complaints that they have nowhere to put it and so on and so forth?
Go ahead.
Yeah. Thank you for that. So the short answer is yes. And so working with the contractor, we're already, talking to them about parts and, they've done it before. They've done it a lot of times, quite frankly. And so, what we believe will happen, Mayor Nuttall, is there will be the order will likely be, there will be a variety to accommodate that exact scenario. Richard and his team are gathering that information right now. We have a reasonably good list of what we believe will be, the more challenging areas. We're not there yet, but we're beginning to develop that. So we absolutely understand that challenge is out there, and we're trying to design a solution for that.
Thank you. The final is, I've read the reports, read the presentation. I still just don't understand the costs. I guess the answer is the market's yielding what the market's yielding. I find it difficult to understand. We could say that we got a great deal over the past number of years, and that's great. And I want a great deal over the next number of years. So I think, we're signed in place, but the cost is kind of inexplicable to me, or maybe it's just not understandable to me. And when speaking with the Minister of the Environment, we had a meeting with him in Barrie. Well, I'm guessing in February or so. In his home municipality, their costs were going down, and not by a lot, quite frankly. He had said that they had projected a lot more savings than they received, but they were going down. And where we are, we're seeing obviously in the 24 and eventually 25, I think it was upwards of 9 million or something like that. It's really hard to understand unless there's a whole bunch of growth that's being anticipated inside of that that we're bringing online.
Yeah. And that's a tough one to answer. I'm not so sure I have a complete answer for you, to be truthful. But we did, we followed the corporation's procurement bylaw. We, designed it in a way to get the most competitive bids, and that's what the process yielded. As Chris mentioned, there are some what we believe to be cost drivers that we've identified, and there is one change, and it's hard for me to quantify it for you, but the last collection contract, it was designed by we paid by weight, and it was unique. We were one of the few that attempted that. And so, in other words, the contractor would pick up garbage, and they would get paid by weight. They pick up organics, they get paid by weight. And so that, I believe, that may have helped contain our costs. This contract now, and we engaged some outside resources, some specialists in helping us to put this whole thing together. It was a very complex procurement document. And so when, the compensation piece came, there was really very little discussion about how it should be structured, and it was by service unit. And so we're going from a contract where we pay by weight to a contract where we're paying by stop, by service unit. And that again is driven by the industry. And because they were pretty, they being our consultant was pretty confident that if we went with any other model, we likely would not get any bids. Which is interesting. Because that would, the industry appears to be driving it, quite frankly.
Go ahead, Bella.
Through you, Chair Hamilton, to Mayor Nuttall. Just wanted to add a few comments to the cost structure. The key with these contracts is they're about 10 years long and they're very capital intensive. So the previous contract we had was tendered in 2013 with the capital investments being based on 2013 prices. So I think that is a big driver behind the additional costs, because now we are investing for the next 10 years based on capital investments that would have been priced in 2022. So even though we are getting less service, I think just the whole pricing climate and the inflation had a lot to do with the fact that we're actually comparing 2013 prices with 2023 prices. And I think that's a big reason behind the price increase.
Makes a lot of sense. Thank you, Val.
I just have a couple of questions and hopefully I'll move us along from the committee members. And if any non-committee members have questions, I'll get to you as well. Just a couple from me. Considering some of the hiccups that we've had in the fall, as you mentioned, with our current contract provider, what assurances can we provide to residents that this next contract is going to have appropriate service delivery standards built in? And do you expect the city will have more control, less control from a service delivery standpoint?
So there was some language built into the RFP and the requirements therein, and obviously now within the contract as far as contingency measures. But I think the bigger portion, the thing to look at is that shift to automated collection and the fact that the strain, wear and tear on the collectors' bodies is significantly reduced. What is increased is their ability to get staff as well, and the fact that they can get people much easier. And this is just based on conversations, obviously, with others that have gone this way with this contractor and even with our current provider. They have said, had we been on an automated system, we wouldn't have had the issues that we had in the fall of last year. So I think really, I hope that answers the question.
Yeah.
Could I just add one more thing, Chris? We believe that Mtera, our new waste collection contractor, probably has some greater strength as well.
Yes.
And so we believe, and they actually helped us out by drawing resources when we were in the crunch. And so I think they're a little more resilient and stronger in that regard.
That would be welcome news, I'm sure, by many. Secondly, just to follow up to that, you mentioned the non-eligible sources, so the industrial, the municipality or municipal for-profit that the city will still look after. And you said when you inquired about that, you were told those are the rules. Who's they? Who said that the rules?
Great question. So, and I'm gonna maybe need Richard for this one, but so it's CMO. Is it CMO, Richard?
Yes, there's. Hello, there we go. So the regulation is developed. It's an Ontario regulation that is developed, and there is I don't know the exact term, but it's like a non-government organization known as RIPRA, which is the Resource Recovery and Circular Economy. They are the enforcers of the regulation. So Ontario develops the regulation, the rules, RIPRA enforces the rules, and then CMO, which is the producer, also a administrator of the regulation, they use those rules to develop their collection system to meet the requirements under the regulation. So I would say they would be, in this case, RIPRA, who is
Extension of the government.
an extension of the government, yes.
So the government's ultimately setting the rule. So in terms of like an advocacy perspective, because to me, having a dual system in place would be incredibly ineffective, inefficient, and you're losing some economies of scale there, right? So I do wonder if there's a role from an advocacy perspective to go back to government to say, why are these ineligible? I mean, you're just creating two different systems, right? That it doesn't
Agreed.
make sense. So I'm,
Agreed.
yes, mark down that comment you made, and I think council may need to discuss a little bit more. What do we do with that
Sure.
information, and how are other municipalities handling that? The other question I had here was, you mentioned the curbside collection expanding to the multi-resident private roads as well. Just want to clarify, I know in my ward, I've got a townhome complex where I guess the townhome corporation is responsible for the pickup in that area, Bedford Estates, if any staff is familiar with that. A lot of issues because the corporation doesn't pick it up. It sits on the curb forever. So are you saying that these areas would now qualify for regular pickup by this new contract partnership?
See,
And maybe it's a staff question if I
I
direct
get to
it.
defer to the guru.
Yes.
Richard.
Yes, that's one of the changes we've made under the contract is that we're still looking at finalizing kind of the standards around the service and working with the contractor, Mterra. But yes, in most cases, some of those multi-residential facilities that are townhouses or row houses on a private roadway would be eligible for curbside collection services.
Okay, that's also a positive. There's lots of positives in here. I think the cost is probably the biggest kind of negative that I'm looking at. And just to pick up on what Mayor Nettle said, was there growth factored into these over the next couple of years, that skyrocketing cost? So growth, and not that we're growing that fast, but growth was a factor in those
Absolutely.
escalating costs.
As well as CPI and a fuel escalation.
Okay.
as well.
And then projections, is that projected to come down, stabilize, continue to go up as producers again are using less materials? Like, are there long-term projections, or is this just a steady incline that or do we know yet?
Yeah, no, great question. It's because it's based on number of service units or stops. I would say it would be a gradual increase is my prediction. But I'm not, it's difficult to look that far out. But it's based, what's driving every now. So number of stops, processing costs. So with organics, which is, that's an area that's growing substantially. So the more material, more organics material, as an example, that we collect, the more that would have to be processed, those costs would go up too, because there's more material.
Okay.
Oh, and Bella?
Yeah, to you, Chair Hamilton, I just wanted to point out that the table that's in the presentation, we did make some assumptions regarding growth, CPI, and fuel adjustment. So those were included for illustration purposes. So as an example, if after 2025, there was no inflation or there was no fuel adjustment, in theory, the price would stay the same. So we did include certain assumptions in there,
Okay.
just
that's
to
helpful.
illustrate what growth is anticipated and what type of CPI and fuel adjustment is included.
Thank you. That's helpful. Ms. James Reed.
Thank you, Chair Hamilton. I just want to build off your question with respect to customer service. I think just building off also what Deputy Mayor Thompson said, that I think it's an obvious situation that customer service in the eventually will get better once we have the carts, but the transition, we're cautioning that there will be a lot of confusion. And I think there'll also be a lot of customer service complaints. That's why there's a proposal that we do need a dedicated communications resource to assist with that. When you think about the service levels that we deliver as a municipality, this one is hitting every single household in Barrie. So you're going to hear complaints, and if we don't properly communicate all those different phase changes starting next May, we're going to have, you're going to be inundated with calls, and so will Service Barrie. So I just wanted to caution that the customer service will be affected in the short term.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. And I think streamlining the communications and having standardized responses through a single entity rather than all of us would be very helpful as well. So point taken. Thank you. Okay, just moving to non-committee members, I am recognizing the time, so be quick if you can. Councillor Morales.
Thank you, Chair Hamilton. So just, there's been lots of details. I'm gonna almost ask like a very rudimentary question, but I just want to be super clear. So the recyclable plastic and paper is moving towards the producers, and it's going to be mixed recycling. It's not going to be paper, one paper bin and one blue bin. Is that correct? Or we don't know yet because they got to figure it out.
For now. That's what's been, yes, that's what we're hearing.
So mixed recycling for now,
Yes,
meaning they could theoretically change it.
absolutely.
Okay.
Yes.
Richard, do you have?
Yeah, so Chris had alluded to it, but there's the transition period. So the city essentially transitions out of the Blue Box program at the start of our contract, May 1st, 2024. And then we're in the transition period from May 1st, 2024 till the end of 2025. During the transition period, whoever is the service provider that will be collecting the Blue Box material in Barrie, they're supposed to keep the system the same. So we collect a dual stream recycling system. We collect it every week. That would stay the same during transition. Once the transition phase is over, they almost have free reign. We don't know the details of what that program is going to look like.
Okay. This might be too micro of a question, but do we know how we're going to recycle the old recycling bins if we do move towards a mixed recycling method?
That's a great question, actually. The short answer is not yet. What we are seeing though is a reluctance for the producers of those bins to take them back. So that's some ongoing discussion right now.
Okay, perfect. I'll go very quick. Can we quantify any savings to landfill costs at the moment? And what I mean by that is there might not be landfill savings. And by landfill savings, I mean the cost of relining and keeping the landfill going essentially. If we're moving towards this pickup, do we expect there to be more diversion, therefore extending our landfill life cycle? Do we expect our landfill to have less of a lifespan because our bins got bigger and, induced demand occurs? Like, I'm just wondering if we have an idea where the needle's moving, and if so, are we able to quantify it either now or later?
So there's a couple of irons in that fire, Councilor Morales. We are looking at processes within the landfill to reduce airspace and increase lifespan. The materials coming off the curb, though, organics, and we're picking on organics today by the sounds of it, but organics, we know is lagging. And so, with communications help and the circular economy push, we're hoping to get more materials out of the garbage stream and into streams that are recoverable. That will help in terms of landfill lifespan for sure.
Okay. I'm looking at the staff report in addition to the presentation, and it kind of showed what things are transitioned to automated pickup. I didn't see recycling in the residential kind of category. Am I misreading the chart or?
No. So the residential recycling, the blue box, gray box, is being pushed to the producer. So that will no longer be our responsibility.
Got it. That's why it's not in the grid. Okay. Yeah. Is there an opportunity to align roadside pickup for multi-res units? I was also looking at the definition. So in the first one, the single one, units, single attached homes, rows, towns, and units up to 6 are classified as such. What I mean is, are we able to align the fact that provincial policy is doing no site plan up to 10 units, meaning there might be a change? Because right now in the city, if you build an Nplex that is 7 units, you are required to do a garbage enclosure room or et cetera.
Yeah.
So there's all these technical details, but now that, unless I'm interpreting something wrong, and hopefully it can be clarified, but now that there's no site plan requirements for anything under 10 units or 10 units or less, are we going to be aligning that? Because I'm just wondering if that affects pickup and design and there can be some efficiencies.
Yeah, great question. And you're right, there is a gap. And so Richard's group is working on some standards.
Okay, awesome.
actually,
So hopefully.
to address that exact issue.
Perfect. So hopefully, I'm sure Richard's group will connect with planning, because I know in our OP that can be synergized. And then last question, BIA garbage pickup. That's exciting about the increase in garbage pickup, like the service, the standard of service. But is this a good opportunity to move towards Moloch bins or comparables? I don't have a preference for like the Moloch company. It's just like they become a universal word like Kleenex. So Moloch or comparables, where essentially, and you guys know this, but I'm just going to quickly go through it. The garbage lives underground, you're creating a deeper hole instead of above. So it's more rodent resistant. It is less odor. It is more capacity. They claim that it's more environmentally friendly because you're doing less pickup, so therefore less gas being consumed, and just better all around. And some of them even have lock and key, so you can manage between 8 a.m. and 8 p.m. The public can use them, they're not locked, and then after that they're locked, and business owners, if they're working nights, have access to that. Wouldn't that be kind of a logical implementation? I know we already have some Moloch bins in the downtown, and we have some on the waterfront grassy part specifically, but in my mind, instead of having above ground bins and then these kind of multi-liter bins, let's call them, instead of having two, we just have Moloch bins and we concentrate the garbage pickup there. That would have less visual clutter from bins being put out whenever they're needed.
I just need to seek a little clarification on that question. So are you thinking, Councilor Morales, that there would be a Moloch shared between several businesses?
Yeah, a Moloch
Okay.
bin in a strategic place, per block, per row, like obviously that can be determined. In some places, it has to go on Dunlop Street, for example. In
Yeah.
some places, it can go on the backside access
Yeah.
road, which we already have one.
Yeah.
Like behind kind of Dunlop East there. So
Yeah, from a collection perspective, that's a slightly different beast in terms of equipment, specialized equipment. We did not study that solution. But happy to take that back and have a look.
would you need council direction to explore that and carburetors? I'm actually very supportive of Councilor Rima's point about carburetors, maybe as a trial in new built condos. And then seeing how it works. Would you need council direction, or is that something you can do on your own? Again, I'm not trying to pump the brakes on something that already is in motion,
Yeah.
but
And so my pause is really about our capacity right now to be able to deliver, that kind of an analysis in a time frame that you're probably looking for. Because right now we're full steam doing a bunch of other stuff that we just described to you, but it would be helpful if we had council direction, that's for sure.
okay, thank you.
Okay, and I think we got one last question here from Councillor Corser.
Yeah, hi. Great presentation. I know you got a lot of questions, hard ones, and I think these are probably going to be some softballs. So Innisfil had an initial pushback regarding persons with mobility challenges with these bins. And that's the word on the street. I haven't heard this in any official capacity. Did they have, when you're doing your research and as other municipalities and areas have been adopting these, and you said as time went by, they actually, different municipalities absorbed these bins as a good idea, and they kind of really think that it's a much improvement on the handling of their home waste. So I'm wondering was that considered when the changes of the bins came in? The bin sizes, was there anything that you heard back about that from different municipalities in your research on this project?
Yeah, I mean, I can speak to the conversations that we had, obviously with the county and a few other different municipalities as well. And quite frankly, it wasn't a topic that came up
Really?
at all with any sort of regularity, or sorry, not at all, not even a single occurrence that I can think of. You've got me thinking, however, and just knowing the way that the bins are, we've got a couple demos on site now just to wrap our heads around what they're going to look like. And obviously we wanted to see sizing before we got here and signed a contract. All that to say, just thinking about the mobility of it and the way that they're constructed, they are on wheels and they can be rolled. And I'm just trying to put myself in somebody else's position and think about that. There's also a bar that's on that device that allows the machine that actually picks it up to pick it up. So even if I wasn't 6'2" and standing the way that I am, if I'm in a wheelchair or something along those lines, I'm thinking with some mobility, it could still be very viable to go ahead and wheel that thing around and get it where it needed to go. Obviously, weight's going to play a factor, and somebody's different state is obviously going to play a role in that as well. But that's my, I guess, initial thought on that.
Thank you. And sorry.
Sorry, if I could add one thing.
Yeah.
What we also heard though is that the size of the cart does play a role in this as well. But what we did hear is that the cart seemed to be a little easier to use compared to a bag of garbage.
Right.
As
And
an
dragging a
example.
can. That
And
is
so
true.
that we did hear.
Thank you.
Yeah, sorry. I did hear that was actually the case, that there was initial pushback, just for a communication standpoint. The initial pushback about seniors with mobility issues, people with mobility issues were not really shined on to this idea of this big bulky bin. And it was the reverse that happened, that it was a much easier thing. And if I may, the Chair Hamilton, another question. Will our residents have a choice? Will there be a choice of bin size, or is the bins set as we see here on slide 11? This is the choice that you have as a residential home.
Sure. Our recommendation is to establish a standard residential set out. But understanding that there will be certain sections of the city that aren't going to fit that exact mold. We absolutely will work to provide a solution that is acceptable.
So that would be more down the pipeline as things
Yeah.
continue on. Okay. And the cost, these bins, I guess this is probably way too micro and way too in advance asked to this. They will be delivered. People will not have to go and get a car if they don't have one, whatever. Yeah. And also, so they'll be delivered to the home. So people that, you don't have to see them on public transit. And if they need another bin, the cost of bin replacement, if it's broken by the truck, who covers the cost of bin replacement
So
for
if-
damaged
if-
bins?
If the system damages the cart, it would be the contractor that would replace it. If it's damaged just because of longevity, have we got there yet?
No?
Say these are pretty micro details.
I
We
know.
can take some of these
Yeah.
conversations offline just
Yeah.
to move us along, if that's okay.
sure.
Okay, all right. Thank you. That's all for now, but I'm really interested in hearing more about this in the future.
Wonderful. Thank you. I think great questions and a lot of information. I think we're probably ready to move on to 7.1, just the consideration of the memo. So the memorandum from S Culture, Acting Associate Director of Waste Management and Environmental Sustainability, dated June 22nd, 2023, regarding the Blue Box transition and new waste collection contract details. Can I have a member of committee put the memorandum on the floor to be received?
So moved, Chair.
Are there any questions from committee members? Any questions from members of council? All in favor? And is carried. Again, thank you very, very much for your time and your patience in answering all of our questions.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Okay, moving on in the agenda, going to item number 4. There are no standing items. There are also no deferred items. So we'll move into the advisory committee reports. We have one advisory committee report to be received. 6.1, report of the Active Transportation and Sustainability Committee, dated May 11th, 2023. Can I have a member of committee put the report on the floor to be received? Councillor Riepma, are there any questions for members of the committee? Are there any questions for members of council in attendance? All in favor? Carries. There are 4 recommendations from the Active Transportation and Sustainability Committee report dated May 11th, 2023. The first is the landfill bike diversion pilot program, and that the landfill bike diversion pilot program be formalized and that Firebird Community Cycle be the recipient of the donations. Can I have a member of committee put the motion on the floor to be approved? Councillor Riepma, are there any questions from committee members?
Actually, I would like to just receive the reports. I don't approve the recommendations. So
And
I don't know how that would work, Madam Clerk.
do you want to separate them out or?
Through you, Chair Hamilton, each of the motions are separated for consideration. So you should go one by one. What you can either do is just if you aren't in favor of it, you can vote against the motion, or you can put an amendment just to receive the motion.
Thank you.
Okay, so can I have a member, so we'll stick to the landfill bike diversion pilot program first. Can I have a member of committee put the motion on the floor to be approved? Councillor Rietma. And then there, so this is for approval. And so, yes.
I have an amendment to just receive the report.
Okay, and I don't need a seconder for that, do I? No. Okay, so any questions from committee members on that? Or any questions from members of council? Yes.
May I?
Councillor Rietma, yeah.
I guess, Deputy Mayor Thompson, you want to receive the report. Is there a reason why you don't want to take any action on it?
Thank you for the question. Yeah, I'm not a big fan of having sole sourced items brought to council. I think there would be if the committee wants to bring it back with a more generic to look into a landfill bike diversion program, but by not naming, I know it's a community cycling organization, but I don't think that we should just give programs away to sole sourced organizations.
Yep, go ahead,
Okay,
Councillor Rietma.
I don't know a great deal about this program, but I know that it's been running for a bit already. And it's been really successful. I don't think that Firebird necessarily makes a lot of money on it. I mean, they're just getting bikes and fixing them and then handing them out again. I think it's a little different than I think Cornerstone, we did that with the textile recycling, and they're definitely making some money on it. This is much more of a community service. So I'm kind of quite favorably disposed towards this, so that, you know, gets bikes out of our landfill and gets them into the hands of kids and people that need and can use them. So I don't see a downside on it, and I don't think that there's, you know, a lot of competition wanting to do that. You know, I don't think they're making any money on it.
And thank you for your comments. It's not about the money, it's about the process for me, right? It's we don't evaluate things on the monetary amounts. If it's already running, is there a contract that's expiring? Like, that's what I don't understand. If this is just a community initiative, why is it coming through council? Like, is it it says that they would be of the donations, like, is it? I don't understand if it's already something going and it's a community-led initiative, why it's being brought forward to the committee. And like, that's like, to my point, I think a member is actually on the committee of Firebird.
Correct.
Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah, so there's a conflict there, in my opinion, also, that he's asking for his own organization to have a sole sourced item from council. Like I said, if to your point, if there's nobody else interested, then it's, and look, maybe it's more of a conflict, in my opinion, than a true conflict of, I just don't think if I sit on an organization, I shouldn't promote the thing I own, kind of.
Madam Chair, I'm certainly very sensitive to the conflict piece that the Deputy Mayor refers to, because I think that's something that we really have to watch. When I read the minutes of the ATS committee, the person that is associated with Firebird did step aside and didn't participate in it. So, if this was a big contract of some sort, I would say in this case, absolutely, we would want to have it as a tendered kind of initiative. But I think in this case, I doubt that there's much interest in it, and it's a very much a public service as opposed to anything else. So I'm more inclined to let it go, let it proceed myself.
Can I just maybe redirect to staff in terms of their opinion? Is this setting a precedent? Is this something that, we don't want to get into from, again, sole sourcing? Any input? And I'm not sure what staff member to direct that to, but just would like to hear your thoughts.
Through you, Chair Hamilton, Mr. Miller's not here, but I think Mr. Miller, if I could read his mind, would say that anytime City Council chooses to go outside procurement or sole source any type of contract, that's a risk to the organization and a precedent we prefer not to set.
Thank you. Appreciate that input. And Councillor Morales.
Very quickly, Chair Hamilton caucusing of the time, and you were lenient with me. Might I recommend a committee member, instead of just receiving it, say that that staff go ahead and do an RFP for this kind of service. That way, I like the idea of recycling bicycles. It just kind of makes sense. Totally agree with Deputy Mayor Thompson, totally agree with the intent. So the happy middle is let's receive it, but do something with it instead of kind of killing the idea. And that way we get the best of all worlds.
I think that's a great suggestion. So should we move to have a member vote to go ahead and receive it, and we will provide direction to one of the council members to go back and make sure that this doesn't get lost and that we do go through the appropriate procurement process.
Would an amendment now be what staff?
Do we need an amendment now, Wendy, or can we just
I
move to receive it and then?
You could amend it tonight to ask that it goes through a procurement process, that the program be formalized, and that process be established for receipt of donations. You could refer it back to the ATS committee for further discussion. There's a number of options that the committee could consider.
Okay, I just don't want to send the wrong message that like we don't want to do it, but I think CEO Press put everything.
CEO Press.
Thank you, Chair Hamilton. Just listening to the discussion, I think one of the pieces that's missing from this before you go to an RFP is committee has not heard from staff as to whether the program is viable, makes sense, or is cost prohibitive. And I wonder, before deciding to go to RFP, you may want to get a memo back from our friends at the Environmental Center as to the volume, the value of it, and whether they think that there's a program worth going to RFP over.
Great point. So I think we should refer it back then to follow through with some of these other discussions that need to be in place before we can go ahead and receive this. Is that?
Yes, I think that's a really good idea. And let's just refer it back to staff for further information. I don't want to lose this one because I think it's a good one, but we do want to make sure that we cover our bases. So let's do it that way, if that's okay.
Just a point of clarity, because all three are very similar, can we just refer all three back to the Active Transportation and Sustainability Committee, Madam Clerk?
Sorry, go ahead, Madam Clerk.
You certainly can refer them all back to the committee for further consultation with staff.
The other two, in my opinion, sorry to interrupt, are a little bit different in the sense that we're seeking staff to provide support to seek out grant funding opportunities. That really, really worries me. Again, in terms of setting a precedent, how many other non-for-profit organizations are going to have knocking on our door and asking with staff time to help and support them in seeking grant funding opportunities. So I'm okay with the landfill bike diversion pilot program and going and having staff look at if that's a sustainable program, but the other two, I think I might prefer just to receive them. I'm not sure if we want to get, utilize more staff time. Where do we draw the line with these types of requests?
Committee.
Send it back to the.
No, that was my intentions, but I'm.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but I'm okay with your direction as well. So we'll vote on the first one to send it back, and then we can do the other two separate.
Okay, so sticking with the landfill bike diversion pilot program, then we are choosing to refer back to the Active Transportation and Sustainability Committee. All in favor? Can I move to the vote? All in favor? And it carries. Okay, we will move on to recommendation number 2 then, the Firebird Community Cycle, that Staff and Development Services Department meet with the Firebird Community Cycle to seek grant funding opportunities and or partnership opportunities in support of viable locations for permanent space and report back to the Infrastructure and Community Investment Committee. Can I have a member of committee put the motion on the floor to be considered? And
Put it on the floor to be received.
excellent, okay.
Is that what we're gonna do?
I think it's, yes, that's what we'll do. Any questions from committee members or council? All in favor for it to be received, and it carries. Moving on to recommendation number 3, creating a grant to support community-based cycling groups to advance the city's cycling objectives. That staff in the Developmental Services Department investigate the creation of a grant to support community-based cycling groups to advance the city's cycling objectives through education, outreach, and supporting residents' access to bicycles, and report back to Infrastructure and Community Investment Committee. Can I have a member of committee put the motion on the floor to be received as we've discussed? Councilor Negussie. Are there any questions from committee members or council members? All in favor? And that is also carried. Moving on to the 4th and final recommendation, the Maple Leafs Forever, that the city of Barrie recognizes the importance of the native maple tree, our arboreal emblem, and we commit to favor planting native maples wherever a maple tree is called for in any municipal planting project. Can I have a member of committee put the motion on the floor to be considered? Councilor Negussie. Are there any questions from committee members? Questions from council? All in favor? And that is carried. All right. We have already done the reports to the committee, so that moves us into adjournment. This concludes the Infrastructure and Community Investment Committee meeting. The Affordability Committee meeting will begin at 6 p.m. I'm sorry, we are 7 minutes behind. The meeting is adjourned.